Alright, today I'm going to show you how to do a power steering flush on your Ford vehicle right in your own driveway, no special tools required. And it's actually a very thorough process, even compared to the dealer or independent shop automated machines that do it. Those ones, it's actually like a wand. It's a wand with a switch on it, and there's two lines coming off of it, one longer than the other one, and you fill it up, then you suck it out. Fill it up, then you suck it out. And it's based off the fact that the return port's higher, and where it sucks the fluid down to go to the pump is lower. If you're still within the same reservoir, nothing gets separated, and you're actually just recirculating the same garbagey fluid right back in and out of there. So what I do is take off that line, and what comes in goes out. So it's the best way to do it. And if you do it right, like the way I'm going to show, it's not messy at all either. So it only takes me like a half an hour. And the best fluid to use for this is not power steering fluid, is actually Mercon V. It's a full synthetic fluid, and it's great for any kinds of hydraulic noise, hissing noise, thumping noise, any kind of noise that can be caused by hydraulic fluid breaking down. This Mercon V is actually used to fix a lot of noise issues in the power steering hydraulic system. There's 4 TSBs out for different vehicles throughout the years, and they say don't use the power steering fluid, use the Mercon V. So today we're going to use the Mercon V, and I urge you to also use that. Get the stuff from the Ford dealer, not the fully compatible multi-brand whatever Mercon V from the auto parts store. Get the full synthetic stuff straight from Ford. So we're going to get started. Alright, the first thing we need to do is disconnect the crankshaft positioning sensor, and that will disable any fuel or spark to the engine so it doesn't fire over, and we can just continually crank it at a low RPM and pump that old fluid out. So all you got to do is go up here by your pulleys right here and dampener, and then you have a tone ring right behind it, and it's going to be in the front cover of the engine. It's usually on the passenger side, and just disconnect it and put it off to the side so it doesn't hit anything. Alright, our demonstration vehicle is going to be on a 2000 Windstar, but the systems are basically all the same on all the Ford vehicles. They'll use a pump and remote reservoir off to the side here, just like this one. They all look basically the same, and they'll have a large line on them like this, which is the actual feed to the pump to work, and then there's a small port on the actual reservoir that's usually 3/8 in size, and this one is the one we need to take off of here and then cap off just like this one. And then we're going to take the other end of that line, which is right here, and we're going to attach it to a piece of 3/8 line that goes over to a bucket of sorts to catch the old dirty fluid. And I'll show you what I'm talking about here. Here's our line that's going to our dump container, and we're going to take our line, a return line that normally plugs into the reservoir, and we're going to attach it. I'm going to put that clamp on there. This really doesn't have much pressure, but it's enough. You want to put clamps on these like that, and we're going to support that off to the side so it's not flopping. And then we're going to put a funnel on the top of the reservoir so we can add a little bit more capacity to it, and we're going to fill it just like so. Alright, we're going to crank it now, and I'll show you the fluid coming out of there. I've changed it to a clear hose for video purposes. You may want to do this just for your own reasoning so you can see the fluid coming out and see how clean it is and see if you're done or not. I'm going to put a couple quarts through here, at least 3 to 4, maybe 5, and really make sure what's in there is all new fluid. So we're going to crank it now, and you can watch it. Now right there you can see everything we're pumping out right now is still old fluid, and we're just going to keep filling it until we get nice red, cherry red fluid coming out of there. And one thing you got to remember is do not crank for more than 15 seconds or else you could damage the starter. And just keep filling it. you can see it already is starting to get a lot more clear to where it's like a nice cherry red instead of a dark red. We're definitely running out of fluid in there. We need to keep topping it off on there. Put about a quart and a half through there, and you can see it's coming out nice and red already. And also, by us coming over here, stopping, and refilling the reservoir, it's also allowing the starter to cool down. So that helps with preventing any kind of starter damage, obviously. Alright, one thing to note is that all these reservoirs, before the fluid actually goes out that big fat main line, actually goes through a little screen in there, a fine mesh screen in there. So if you're having problems with noises or whatever, and you've done your last pump out of the fluid on here, you'll be able to see this screen now and give it a good look. This one's not too bad. It's not going to really cause any blockages. It's doing its job. It's not torn. But make sure yours isn't full of debris in there where it's restricting. And then, of course, the pump's going to have problems because it won't have fluid. So that's one thing to check while you're in here. Alright, going back together, just make sure you have your line back on there fully seated and your clamp back on there. And then we're going to fill the reservoir in here to the very top to make sure that we have plenty of fluid in here upon startup. Because it's going to be replacing those air pockets in the system with fluid quite fast. So we got to make sure you have extra fluid on hand to start bleeding it out. And then, of course, go down below and put your crank sensor connector back on so it'll actually start. And then we can start it, let it idle, and we'll start bleeding it out. Now it's going to have aeration in the actual fluid, and it may seem quite foamy. Just keep working the power steering back and forth, turn the wheel back and forth, lock to lock, and it'll eventually go away. So don't worry about the noise or the foaminess. It'll all work itself out of there. And we just need to make sure that fluid level is topped off to prevent any kind of pump damage, and then make sure there's no more air pockets obviously being developed. So just keep it full and just keep turning that wheel back and forth at an idle, and then we can go from there. Now there is a tool adapter that actually fits that reservoir cap on there, the spout neck on there, so you can pull a vacuum on the system and get all the air out just by pulling a vacuum on it. And that's the absolute best way of doing it, but turning it back and forth will work also. I'm going to do a combination of the two to make sure the air is completely out of the system for this guy. All you do is make sure the reservoir is filled, obviously. Take it, sticks right into there, and then you just pull a vacuum on it, and you'll start to hear the air as it passes through the pump there. Usually doesn't make this noise until about 15 or so inches of vacuum, but we got plenty of air in the system right now, so of course it's going to do it. Alright, so as far as the bleeding process, all you gotta do is let it idle down, make sure that fluid's topped off, and then we're gonna turn it lock to lock. Don't hold it at the locks more than 2 seconds, or you can cause power steering, system damage in general from the high pressures. Lock, lock, lock. And you're just going to keep doing that until all the aeration's out of the system there. Alright, so I hope this helps. It's always nice to be able to maintain your vehicle, and it's a good idea to maintain your vehicle from brake flushes to coolant flushes to even power steering flushes. It's a very good idea. It gets all those contaminants out of there and keeps your system operating smoothly. It definitely works. You don't want, grit in there working with metal to metal. You want to be as clean as possible and as lubricating as possible, and not just the other way around. So it's a good idea to do this, I would say, every 30,000 miles, depending on the color and how the fluid looks.